Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. 3,000 years of silence. Then humans smiled at war like old friends. The calm before the chaos. The galaxy had known peace for over 3,000 years. No war had broken out in centuries, and the different civilizations of the galaxy lived side by side in harmony, or so it seemed. Earth, a small and mostly ignored planet, was one of the quietest in the universe. The humans on Earth had spent most of this time focusing on themselves, rebuilding their civilization, and expanding into space. There was little to indicate they were anything more than just another species in the vast cosmos, a species far from the minds of the galaxy's most powerful empires. Humanity had always been underestimated by the other alien races. Earth was a distant world, isolated and relatively insignificant. The larger empires, such as the Korth or the Zorons, viewed humans as primitive. They believed Earth's peaceful history meant that the humans had no capacity for war or defense. Most alien species had forgotten about Earth entirely, thinking of it as a backwater planet too far removed from galactic politics to matter. But the Zorons were about to make a costly mistake. For humans, life had been simple. They had prospered on their home planet and developed into an advanced spacefaring civilization. Despite this, they were never seen as a threat by the larger galactic empires. For centuries, they lived under the belief that no one would challenge them, that their peace would last forever. But what no one knew was that the humans had been preparing. They had been building, planning, and waiting in the shadows, knowing that one day, the peace would end. Across the galaxy, the Zorons, a mighty and ruthless species, ruled over vast stretches of space. They were known for their immense fleet and advanced technology. For the Zorons, Earth's peaceful existence was an anomaly, it was a weakness. It made no sense to leave such a planet untouched. After all, the Zorons believed that the strong should rule and the weak should be crushed. They saw Earth as a right target for conquest. They didn't think it would be difficult, they didn't think humanity could ever defend itself. It all started with a message, a single encrypted transmission sent by the Zorons, breaking the silence of 3,000 years of peace. It wasn't a warning, it wasn't a negotiation, it was a declaration of war. The message arrived in the dead of night, its contents clear and terrifying: Earth will be conquered. Your time is over. The humans were to submit to the Zorons' rule or face total annihilation. There was no room for negotiation. When the message was first received, many people on Earth didn't know how to react. Was this a mistake? Was it some sort of hoax? Earth had always been left alone, so the idea that a powerful alien race would suddenly target them was hard to comprehend at first. The leaders of the human nations couldn't believe it. How could this be real? Why would the Zorons even bother with a planet like Earth? It took hours for the truth to sink in. This was not a hoax, this was real. In the secret bunkers hidden deep beneath the surface of Earth, high-ranking military officials began scrambling to respond. They tried to make sense of the Zorons' message. It was unlike anything they had encountered before. These aliens didn't come to negotiate, they came to destroy, and they had already started to move their fleet toward Earth. The people of Earth had no choice but to prepare for what was coming, but there was something the Zorons didn't know: humanity wasn't as helpless as they believed. Despite the panic that began to spread across the world, there was a strange sense of calm among certain groups. In the quietest corners of Earth, in places where no one else had dared to look, the humans had been preparing for this moment. While the rest of the galaxy had forgotten about them, the humans had been working in secret beneath the surface, in forgotten bunkers. A fleet lay dormant, hidden for centuries. This fleet, a remnant of a long-forgotten era, was their last line of defense. The technology was ancient, but it was powerful. It was not like the sleek and shiny ships of the Zorons. No, this fleet was rugged, designed to withstand the harshest battles, to survive against all odds. The rest of the galaxy had long since abandoned the idea that the humans had any military strength. They had been right to forget Earth. But they had made one fatal mistake: the humans had been watching, waiting for a moment like this. They weren't weak, they were patient, they were resourceful, and when the time came, they would strike back. As the Zoran's fleet drew closer, the world prepared for war. Military leaders from all over the Earth scrambled to organize defenses, but it wasn't just military leaders who were preparing. Every citizen of Earth, from the most powerful leaders to the common worker, felt the weight of the coming storm. It wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a battle for pride. Humanity's very existence was on the line. But in the heart of Earth's military command, there was a quiet confidence. Those who knew the secret of the fleet weren't worried. They knew the Zorans had underestimated them. They knew that while the Zorans had the power, the humans had the will, and when the time came, Earth's fleet would rise, ready to fight, ready to prove that they had never been as weak as everyone thought. The calm before the storm was just the beginning. The real battle was about to begin. As the first ships of the Zorans entered Earth's orbit, the world held its breath. What would happen next? Would humanity fall to the might of the Zorans, or would the humans rise to the challenge, showing the galaxy that they were more than just a quiet, peaceful species? The answer was yet to come, but one thing was clear: humanity was ready for the storm, and they weren't about to go down without a fight. The fate of Earth, and perhaps the galaxy, hung in the balance. The calm before the storm was over, the real battle had just begun. The Zorans were not a race to be underestimated, but that's exactly what they did when they targeted Earth. As their enormous fleet continued to make its way toward the small blue planet, their commanders and warriors believed victory was inevitable. Their ships were massive, capable of devastating destruction, with advanced weaponry far beyond what humanity had ever imagined. The Zorans had long conquered countless worlds, leaving devastation in their wake, and Earth seemed like the next in line to them. The idea of humanity fighting back was laughable. It was clear to the Zorans that Earth's time had come. As the first of the alien ships entered the solar system, their towering warships cut through space like massive shadows from the distant reaches of the galaxy. They seemed unstoppable. The humans, though aware of their impending doom, were not yet in a panic. Their military was small in comparison to the Zorans' mighty fleet, and most of their resources were focused on the planet's defense. But Earth's leaders had never faced an enemy like this before, and the early stages of their response were filled with uncertainty. On the surface, Earth's major powers began to come together. Governments coordinated with the military, and panic swept through major cities as the reality of the alien invasion settled in. Most of the world's population was still in disbelief, unsure whether they should hope for a miracle or brace for the worst. News broadcasts ran non-stop, showing images of the incoming alien fleet. People wondered whether humanity would survive, but few understood the gravity of the situation. The enemy was far more advanced, and the chances of defeating them seemed slim. Behind the scenes, however, the human military was working with surprising efficiency. The leaders knew they could not afford to waste time. It wasn't long before the full extent of the military's secret preparations became clear. The hidden fleet, a relic of an era gone by, was humanity's only hope. For centuries, it had remained buried, locked away in underground bunkers, forgotten by most. It had been designed for a time like this, an emergency, a last line of defense, buried deep beneath the Earth's surface, hidden from the eyes of their enemies. Now, it was humanity's only chance to survive. While the Zorans moved forward expecting no resistance, the first signs of humanity's true power began to emerge across the globe. Military leaders scrambled to activate the fleet, gathering resources and putting the pieces into place. The commanders who knew of the fleet's existence began to rally the forces, preparing for a confrontation that was fast approaching. The ancient fleet, long dormant, was awakening. Despite their fear, the people of Earth had begun to rally around their leaders. There was a growing sense of unity, a shared understanding that this was a fight for their survival. In the streets of major cities, protests and demonstrations shifted from fear to determination. People started to realize that this wasn't just a battle for survival, but a fight to prove humanity's place in the galaxy. They weren't going to let an alien empire take over without putting up a fight. The Zorons might have underestimated them, but now they would learn that the people of Earth had a spirit that couldn't be broken. In secret bunkers and military command centers, humans prepared their defenses. The technology on the old fleet was outdated, but it was sturdy and reliable. It wasn't the sleek, powerful ships that the Zorons commanded, but it was something much more important: it was human ingenuity. The fleet was ready, and the time had come to act. The Zorons were about to learn that they had made a terrible mistake. As the alien ships neared, the humans started to move into position. It was an imperfect plan, but it was the best they had. In the heart of Earth's command, commanders briefed their soldiers, reminding them of the high stakes. This was more than a military operation, it was humanity's last stand. The Zorons' fleet loomed large in the sky, yet the humans didn't flinch. They had nothing left to lose. As the first shots were fired, there was no turning back. The battle for Earth had begun. The Zorons, still confident in their superiority, couldn't yet comprehend the tenacity of the humans. What they didn't know was that humans fought not just for survival, but for everything they had built. They fought for their families, their homes, and their way of life. The Zorons' arrogance was about to cost them dearly. The first wave of human ships took to the sky, emerging from hidden launch sites around the planet. The once quiet and peaceful world was now alive with the sound of war. The alien ships were massive, their guns powerful and their presence overwhelming, but the humans didn't hesitate. They attacked with a fierce resolve, striking the Zorons where they least expected it. Their old ships may have been slower and less advanced, but they were still deadly. The humans knew how to use every advantage they had, and in this moment, their most significant advantage was their will to fight. The battle raged on, with the Zorons shocked by the ferocity of the human resistance. What had been a peaceful world was now the site of a war unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The humans, underestimated and dismissed for so long, were proving that they had the strength to defend their planet. The fight wasn't over, but the Zorons were starting to realize that they had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity's resolve. The calm before the storm was officially over, the war had begun, and humanity wasn't going down without a fight. Every single human, from the youngest to the oldest, had something to fight for. The Zorons had thought they could crush Earth without a second thought, but now the tables were starting to turn. The real battle was just getting started. The battle for Earth raged on, and the Zorons quickly realized they had severely underestimated their opponents. What had initially been seen as a simple invasion, an easy conquest, was quickly turning into a nightmare for the alien empire. The humans had refused to back down, and they were fighting in ways that the Zorons had not anticipated. As the war escalated, it became clear that the Zorons had underestimated not only Earth's military capabilities but also the strength of human resolve. The ancient fleet, though outdated, proved to be more than just a relic of the past. The Zorons had assumed it would be a mere formality to crush any resistance, but the humans had prepared for this moment for centuries. The technology of Earth's fleet, while not as advanced as that of the Zorons, was still effective. It was the human ingenuity that made the difference. Their ability to adapt, improvise, and fight with a relentless spirit was something the Zorons could not match. The Zorons' fleet, once so confident and towering, began to feel the weight of their mistake. With each passing day, Earth's resistance grew stronger. Their weapons, though not as powerful as those of the Zorons, were used in ways that made the alien invaders second-guess their assumptions. Humans fought with a desperation and determination that the Zorons had never encountered before. On the front lines, human soldiers fought with an intensity that astonished even their enemies. The battles were fierce, and the losses on both sides were heavy, yet every time the humans were pushed back, they found a way to regroup and fight again. The Zorons' once unshakable confidence began to crumble as they faced this unexpected resistance. The human strategy was simple: hit hard and hit fast. They used guerrilla tactics and their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. The Zorons, despite their superior technology, couldn't keep up with the humans' unpredictability. The battlefields became chaotic, and the Zorons found themselves struggling to keep control. Earth's fighters had a unique advantage: they were fighting for more than just victory. They were fighting for their homes, their families, and their very existence. Every alien ship destroyed, every inch of territory reclaimed, felt like a small victory in a much larger war. As the days turned into weeks, the Zorons realized they were not dealing with a defenseless planet. Earth's military might may not have been as advanced, but their people's courage, determination, and ingenuity were unparalleled. The Zorons had expected to break the human spirit, but instead, they had awakened it. The war was no longer about the destruction of a weak species, it had become about the survival of humanity. In the skies above, the once invincible Zorons' warships were now showing signs of wear. Their weapons, as powerful as they were, couldn't keep up with the relentless strikes from Earth's forces. Each human counterattack felt like a rebuke to the Zorons' arrogance. Their fleet, which had seemed so unbeatable just days ago, was now reeling from the unexpected ferocity of human resistance. Down on the ground, civilians were no longer just hiding in fear, they were taking up arms, building makeshift defenses, and joining in the fight. It was as if every single person on Earth had decided that they would not go down without a fight. The idea of humanity as helpless victims had been shattered. In its place was a fierce, unified force determined to protect their home from the invaders. Even as the humans fought back with everything they had, the Zorons were not backing down. They had made their decision to invade Earth, and they weren't going to retreat easily. The war escalated, and as more battles were fought, more lives were lost. Yet the human spirit never wavered, they knew that they could not afford to give up. Every victory, no matter how small, brought them closer to turning the tide. The Zorons began to understand just how dangerous their mistake had been. They had thought they could crush humanity with ease, but now they were discovering the truth. Earth's people were not just survivors, they were fighters. The Zorons had underestimated the human will to live, to protect their planet, and to fight for their future. Each attack, each battle, only made the humans more determined. They were not just defending Earth, they were defending everything they believed in. As the war continued, the Zorons found themselves unable to predict what the humans would do next. The chaos of battle was taking its toll on the alien fleet, and humanity's ability to adapt and evolve in the face of danger was proving to be their greatest weapon. The Zorons' pride, once a source of strength, was now their greatest weakness. They had come to Earth believing they would find easy victory, but instead, they had awakened a force that they could not control. It was only a matter of time before the Zorons would have to face the full consequences of their arrogance. The battle for Earth was far from over, but the tides were turning. The Zorons had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. The war had just begun, but the humans were showing the galaxy that they would not be so easily conquered. They were ready to defend their planet with everything they had, and they would not stop until victory was in their grasp. As the war raged on, the Zorons began to realize that their attempts to overwhelm humanity were failing. What they had thought would be a swift and easy invasion was turning into an unwinnable conflict. The human resistance had only grown stronger with each passing day, and the Zorons found themselves in a struggle they had never anticipated. In the skies above Earth, the Zorons' ships, once pristine and imposing, were now battered and scarred. The alien fleet, capable of devastating planets with ease, had become a symbol of their overconfidence. Every time they launched an attack, they found that the humans were not only capable of fighting back, but were also learning from their mistakes. Every failed assault only made the humans more determined to succeed, every battle lost by the Zorons pushed them closer to defeat. The Zorons had been quick to dismiss humanity, assuming that their primitive technology and lack of unity would make them easy prey. What they didn't realize was that humans were resourceful in ways that even the most advanced civilizations couldn't understand. They took their failures and turned them into victories, learning from each mistake and using it to adapt. The Zorons, despite their technological superiority, struggled to keep up with the sheer unpredictability of human tactics. Humanity's response to the invasion was not just about fighting back, it was about survival. People from every corner of the earth had banded together to protect their planet. No one was spared from the effort. Men, women, and children alike did their part, whether it was in the military, in the factories, or in the cities, building weapons and defenses. The spirit of unity and determination was unlike anything the Zorons had seen before. They had assumed that humanity would crumble under pressure, but instead, the pressure only hardened them. On the ground, the situation was equally dire for the invaders. The human strategy was relentless. Cities that were once symbols of human weakness and vulnerability became fortresses. People built underground bunkers, created hidden networks, and developed ways to strike back when the Zorons least expected it. The once pristine landscapes of Earth had been transformed into battlegrounds, with every inch of ground fiercely contested. The Zorons quickly found themselves in a situation where every advance they made was met with fierce resistance. The humans weren't just defending their homes, they were fighting for their future. In this fight, the Zorons had underestimated the depth of humanity's resolve. The humans refused to be intimidated, refused to give up, and refused to let their planet fall to an alien empire that had once fought them as if they were weak. At first, the Zorons had believed that their superior technology would guarantee victory. Their weapons were powerful, their ships were fast, and their forces were vast. But what they had failed to take into account was the human will to survive. Humanity's greatest strength was not in its weapons or technology, but in its determination, the will to fight for what mattered most, their homes, their loved ones, and their very way of life. As the war progressed, the Zorons began to see the true nature of their mistake. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to innovate, and to outsmart even the most advanced technologies. The humans were using their own advantages, speed, adaptability, and creativity, to turn the tide of the war in their favor. On the battlefield, the Zorons found themselves increasingly outmatched. Their once dominant forces were now being outmaneuvered and outgunned. For all their power, they could not keep up with the unpredictability of the human spirit. It was a battle of brains versus brawn, and the Zorons were beginning to realize that brute force alone would not win this war. It wasn't just the military forces that were putting up a fight. As the invasion continued, Earth's civilians became more and more involved in the resistance. People who had once lived in fear now took up arms, joined the efforts to develop new weapons, and fought alongside soldiers to defend their planet. What had started as an alien invasion had now become a global conflict, and humanity's response was to unite and fight as one. The Zorons, once so confident in their superiority, were now facing the reality that their war was faltering. Their fleet was being systematically whittled down, and their ground forces were facing continuous setbacks. The once feared alien invaders were now struggling to maintain control. Their once pristine ships, now surrounded by the wreckage of their failed attempts to conquer Earth, served as a constant reminder: the Zorons had underestimated humanity's spirit, and now they were paying the price for their arrogance. The human spirit, though tested, was unbreakable. With each passing day, the Zorons saw their grip on Earth loosen more and more. It became clear that the Zorons had made a fatal mistake in underestimating humanity. What they had thought would be a quick and easy conquest had turned into a nightmare, and they were now fighting for their own survival. With each new victory the humans achieved, the Zorons' chances of victory diminished. The tides were turning, and the Zorons' time had come to an end. Earth's warriors were ready to reclaim their home. The Zorons were on the brink of collapse, their once mighty fleet now a shadow of its former self. Their initial strategy had relied on overwhelming force, assuming that Earth's defenses would crumble under their might. But the humans had proven to be far more than the Zorons had ever anticipated. They had underestimated not only humanity's strength, but also its resilience. And now, as the Zorons' forces faltered, the humans were pushing forward with relentless determination, determined to reclaim their planet. In every corner of Earth, resistance was growing stronger. The initial fear and confusion had long since turned into resolve. The human spirit, unbroken by the alien assault, had become the driving force behind the fight. From the smallest villages to the largest cities, people were joining the cause, men and women, old and young, putting aside their differences to focus on one singular goal, victory. They understood that this was not just a war for survival, but a battle to protect everything they held dear, their homes, their families, and their way of life. The Zorons had expected to crush the humans swiftly, but they had underestimated the very thing that made humanity unique, its adaptability. While the Zorons had the advantage in technology, they had failed to account for the creative ingenuity that humans brought to the table. As the Zorons' ships continued to fall from the sky, the humans adapted. They scavenged wreckage from their enemies and used it to build new weapons, stronger defenses, and better tactics. They didn't just learn from their mistakes, they used those lessons to outthink the invaders at every turn. On the ground, Earth's armies had begun to push the Zorons back, reclaiming territory that had once been lost. Cities that had fallen to the alien invaders were being liberated, and with each victory, humanity's morale soared. The Zorons, once confident in their technological superiority, now found themselves on the defensive, retreating from a force they had never truly understood. The Zorons, once the predators of the galaxy, were now the hunted, unable to escape the relentless onslaught of humanity's determination. What the Zorons had failed to realize was that Earth was not just a planet, it was a symbol of resistance and unity.